Today's episode is sponsored by Landon Beach wrote every audiobook narrator's worst fear, being kidnapped by obsessed fans who are determined to have them perform their novel in a one-of-a-kind psychological thriller, Narrator. We, the listeners, experience every twisted moment alongside Sean Frost, the narrator. Or do we?
June is Audiobook Month. Join Viviana, the Enchantress of Books, and the Audiobook Lovin Series as she celebrates the authors and narrators who bring your favorite stories to life. Not only will this month be packed with exciting guest podcasts full of all things books, but stick around after each episode for some special information about this year's giveaway and more.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 9, Episode 11 of this year's Audiobook Lovin Series. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with author Piper James. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. She's a little bit nervous because I am officially popping her cherry in podcasting and getting an audio interview this way. But I already told her she's going to be great. So no worry. Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been writing, and how you got started?
I have been writing since 2015. I actually scratch that. I've been publishing since 2015. I used to write young adult paranormal romance, urban fantasy, all young adult stuff. I do have a dark romance series. And then in 2020, I was like, you know what? I want to do something different. I started writing these romantic comedies. And in 2021, in January, I started releasing them as Piper James. And that's how she was born.
So you go from writing young adult and fantasy and paranormals and magics and all these different things to writing contemporary romance, specifically rom-com. How do you decide to do that? Like, what was it about the genre that goes, I want to switch over?
Well, there were several things. What I enjoy reading, your reading tastes change over time. When I first started writing young adult paranormal romance, it was the first time I read Twilight, and I fell in love with that genre. And I did that for several years. And then I branched out my reading taste into the rom-com adult stuff. And I was like, this would be a lot of fun to write. Not to mention a little easier because you don't have to create these entire worlds and magic systems and keep everything straight. It's all set in the real world. And I just wanted to do something a palate cleanser, I guess. And so I decided to write one book, and that turned into 2, and that turned into 5, and that turned into 11, I think, that I released in 2021 because it was so fresh and new. And I was so excited. It was taking me 3 or 4 weeks to write an entire novel. Then at the end of 2021, I was like, I need to slow down a little bit because I was hitting a little bit of a burnout. So I don't release quite as quickly anymore, but I'm still really enjoying writing the genre.
Was it a shock at all to write? The main difference between YA and adults, regardless of the genre, is that you're not fading to black or even getting close to some of that stuff when you're doing a YA. But now you're writing full blown out, make out sessions and heavier sexual stuff. How is that for you?
Oh, yeah. It's open. The door is all the way open. It was a little tough at first. I didn't want any of my friends to read it, but of course they read them anyway. So we made a long-standing rule that they can talk to me about the books, but they are not allowed to discuss those scenes with me in any context, shape, fashion, or form. But now that, I've been doing it for a while, I don't care anymore. It's not that big of a deal. But at first, yeah, I was like, no, do not even mention it to me. I don't want to talk about it. And then, so my mother-in-law, who's in her 70s, has read all my books since when I started writing these. She's like, oh, I want to read them. So after much, debate, I sent her a couple. And then we did a video call on Easter, and she was like, what? I don't know where you come up with this stuff. And I was like, it's all my imagination. I promise. It was bad. But, I'm over it now. It's fine. I didn't send her anymore.
Well, yeah, because that's another conversation. Parents don't stop being parents regardless of the age. So.
Right.
Yeah. Do you find yourself when you're writing the book, do you skip over certain scenes? I know some authors will do a insert sex scene here or insert banter fight here. Do you have anything like that when you write, or do you write continuously across?
No, I'm very linear because it plays out like a movie in my head while I'm writing, and I don't skip around in movies. I'm not going to skip around and come back. And so I write straight through. I used to be a pantser, meaning I didn't plot. And then I kind of learned to plot, and it made my life so much easier. And and I realized, yeah, probably should have been doing this. I don't write myself into corners anymore. I don't get writer's block anymore because I know where the story's going. So yeah, I write in a straight line, start to finish.
It's interesting you said that when you're writing, you see it as a movie. When I read, I see it as a movie. And you're right, there's no skipping.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of my readers tell me when they read my books, is that they can see it play out in their heads as a movie. And I'm like, well, that's how it is when I write it. So yay, 4, I win.
I thought I was always the only one that read that way and saw it that way. And then when I got 12, 15 years ago, more involved with the authors and the readers, and we were having conversations with other book friends, and they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, wait, I'm an all bottom weird, but about this, I'm normal. Quote, okay, yay. And someone else has the same thing. Yeah, it's always fun. Do the characters talk to you when you're writing? Some authors
No,
say
I don't
that
really
stuff
get
too.
that. If I'm in
Okay.
company with other authors, I'll be like, yeah, for sure. My characters talk to me. I have voices in my head. No, they don't. I tell them what to do and they do it. Maybe, yeah, I crack the whip.
Nice. They're good boys and girls. We all do our own thing, and conversations are happening more and more nowadays. And sometimes with any kind of career hobby, when we hear other people doing it a specific way, sometimes we tend to self-doubt that we're doing it the wrong way, or that maybe something's missing and things like that, and you try to shift it. And then also that's where you get writer's block and then nothing flows. I'm glad that you stuck to yours and not, but it is funny that you're like, yeah, I do that too. Nice.
Well, imposter syndrome is a real thing, and we fight with it for a long time. And then eventually you just have to realize you are who you are and you're doing what you're doing and you're successful. People like your books. You don't need to freak out over it anymore. Now I just got to freak out of whether or not your listeners are going to like me or think I'm stupid.
Oh, stop. No. One of the things that I think listeners love about when you guys do interviews, whether it's a written interview on a blog or magazine, or when you do a live, your own platforms, or as a guest, is that we get these little nuances to think. Part of that whole us being to human nature to be a bit of a voyeur, but we also are curious about your processes, and we're curious about like, where do you get your stories? And did that, whole fight scene throwing your bra out because like you did in one of your books to someone that scared you, did that ever happen to you in real life? One of those things, as listeners, we love that stuff. I for sure do. But yeah, it's just one of those where you're going, So the scene that I'm referring to is from her playing with the doctor, which great title. It's the Milestone Mischief Book 1, and it's narrated by Blake Lockhart and Lee Daniels. It opens up with a scene of the doctor seeing his older patient. And as he's leaving, he's walking down a corridor to head out of the house, and all of a sudden he hears a screech and he gets attacked. As you're listening to it, then he realizes, which means you're also, which is also how I love that you've been writing, is that we all kind of find out at the same time as a character in the moment, and that's a bit of a ooh kind of a reaction that you get versus being told in advance, and it's a bra.
Right.
So these kind of scenes, where do you get your stories to write these books?
There are certain stuff that I'll pull from real life. That is not one of them. I never attacked somebody or almost took out their eye with a bra. That particular scene like that, I don't know. I'll just be writing or plotting or whatever I'm doing. And I'm like, what would be funny here? What would be a cute way for them to meet? I don't want to call it a stroke of genius, but so it'll occur to me and then I'll start laughing and I'm like, okay, that's good. I should write that out.
That meet cute is so important because it kind of gives a bit of that what's to come a little bit. What have been some of your favorite? How do you like to have your couples meet cute?
I mean, one thing you should know about me is that I have a terrible memory. I even have trouble sometimes remember what happens in the own books that I write. Usually my book ones will have a meet cute, but then I introduce all the characters in book one and then they each get their own book. So that doesn't necessarily happen in every book that I write. Probably my favorite is that one from Playing with the Doctor, just because I myself found it so funny. And that's something that I struggle with when I started writing rom-coms was, am I actually funny? I don't know. I think I'm funny, but everybody thinks they're funny, right?
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a struggle for me. And so when people find that scene funny and they talk about it and they tell me that they laughed, and that gave me a little more confidence. So I would have to say that one is probably my favorite. Another of my favorites is the little black dress. My main female character meets the main male character and they instantly hate each other. He causes her to lose her job, not directly, or intentionally, but he's kind of a dick. So then she gets a new job and it ends up being him. In that moment, when she sees him walk in, she tries to get security to escort him out before she realizes that it's her new boss, the casino owner, where she's getting a job as his assistant. So that was a lot of fun too. So those two are probably my favorites.
Oh, goodness gracious. I can imagine that scene.
And there's a couple of, before that happens, she sees him again and gets up in his face. Like, she is one of my favorite characters because she has no bones about just telling people exactly how she feels about something, which is something that I struggle with. I've always been a bit of a people pleaser. Not until I got up in age that I started speaking my mind a little more, but she's just brash and brazen, and she's like to drink, and when she drinks, she gets a little crazy.
I sometimes like to call it, she gets a little bit more honest.
Right. She gets honest.
I do love a strong, smart heroine. And so thank you for writing those. I think sometimes some authors might feel that we won't like the character if they're more independent or if they're more stronger in their own vocalizations of how they feel or what they want, and the readers won't like that. I'm like, no. If you give me a weak and a meek heroine, that's where I'm going to walk away. But I love a spunky,
Right.
sarcastic, probably because I'm a little sarcastic. Just okay, no, I'm fucking sarcastic. Yeah.
And that's what's fun about writing these spicy rom-coms too, is because when I was writing the young adult, like paranormal romance, I tended to write meeker characters. Like, they started out impoverished, sometimes abused, sometimes not very confident in their own self-worth. And throughout the series, they would grow into themselves and become the one. That's kind of how the story goes. But I can write these characters just right off the bat. I have a lot of just sassy and spunky characters, and it's just so much fun.
Those are always great to listen to too, because of how the interpretation of the narrator is doing a particular scene. You're going, yeah, that's kind of how I would have said it. That reaction when he got hit, he's like, what the fuck? Yeah,
So
he
great.
is. He's really good. He's one that I recently been listening to a little bit more, and I'm going, oh, okay, I hear you. Because technically I can't say I see you, but you know what I mean. You writing primarily in the subgenre of rom-com, and romance being an umbrella term where all these different subgenres are underneath it, from the paranormal and including sci-fi and fantasy. Have you ever wanted to start maybe writing in a different subgenre?
Yes, I don't read sci-fi at all. I don't read a lot of high fantasy. If it's urban fantasy or if it's not like super high, I enjoy it, but I'm starting to enjoy like more dark romance, but not too dark. So I just can't get into some of the darker triggers that people tend to write about and rave about. So I'm dipping my toes in and I am enjoying it. And I'm like, well, maybe I could write this. I don't know. But I just don't know if that's like too far away from rom-com. I'm going from one end of the spectrum to the other. We'll see.
What about keeping it in the rom-com, but having it be in a difference, like a paranormal rom-com of sorts? That ever thought about writing that way?
No, I haven't actually thought about
Shifters
that.
can be funny.
Maybe.
Witches can be funny.
That's true.
And then that kind of gets you a little bit, into
true.
getting closer to that darker side of the romance world. Yeah, that dark romance. I feel you. It's interesting how that's become an entire new category of sorts. It used to be just contemporary romance with like mobsters. Now that there's newer elements that are, significantly darker topics. And I'm like, this is why I read because I don't want to go there. But they're loving it.
No, and I totally get that. And so I do have a dark romance, but YA. I'm going to call it new adult. They're in high school, so technically it should be YA, but it's a little bit more risque than what YA should be. A little more, the door's cracked open, right? But when I was writing that, I really loved writing it, but I just couldn't go to those dark places where there was violence, or you know what I mean? So it was mostly like cyberbullying, getting into fights and stuff, but not guy against the girl. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm not gonna but I'm in that genre. I
Yeah.
might give it a
Well,
shot. We'll see.
I
I don't
always
know.
say go for it,
I
and
didn't.
then that way you can at least say you tried. That's the other thing. I hate having regrets. You never know. I'm like, just go for it. Worst case scenario, you find that's not your thing, and then you go back to writing rom-coms and you decide to do shifters that are romantic, rom-coms instead. Who knows? The other thing though that readers are really heavily more into now are tropes. So, the genres used to be the thing, but now everybody's like, I need to have surprise baby, or I need to have a enemies to lovers. What's your favorite trope to write?
My favorite trope is enemies to lovers. It always has been, even when I didn't know what tropes were. My favorite books from when I was a teenager and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love the enemies to lovers. And I'm really loving the fake relationship now. And that's how how my process starts actually, is when I'm planning out a series. The first thing I do is decide the main trope in each book. This one is going to be enemies to lovers. This one is going to be surprise baby or secret baby or friends to lovers or fake relationship. And then I'll throw the rest, the other minor tropes in. But that's the first thing that I do because I want to write what I want to write. And I don't want it to evolve into something that I'm not going to enjoy or that my readers aren't going to enjoy.
Yeah, because even if you're a fast writer, you still have to go through that whole process of what that looks like. And then you're not done, because then that's your first draft. Then you got to go through the second draft and editing. And then you have to get a book cover. There's a lot that you're kind of stuck with that book for a bit. So wanting to enjoy it, I think, is that you're enjoying it. It's important. It's not work if you're having fun.
And that's kind of what, when I was writing series, because my series are interconnected standalones. So I get to write a new couple every book. But when I was writing true series, it got to the point where I got to the third book and I'm like, I'm so tired of these people. Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. In addition to having no memory, I also have no patience. It makes it a little difficult to spend the better part of a year or more with the same two people. I also have to finish what I start. That's why I was like, I'm just gonna start writing these rom-coms and see how this goes, and it just breathe fresh breath of air into my life.
It's a lot easier to write the stories too, I'm sure, if you're having fun with the characters. Because you're a plotter, do you just plot that book that you're writing, or you're saying, okay, I'm going to have this be a 5-book series and we're going to have these as a couple, this as a trope, and so on and so forth? Is that part of your process? Or
so
it
when I
depends on the story?
start, and I'm a pen and paper kind of girl, I'm just starting to plot on my computer literally in the last 6 months. I've always had a notebook, but then I realized that toggling back and forth between Word documents is a lot easier than flipping pages and searching my messy handwriting for what I need. I do sit down and I say, okay, I want this to be, there are going to be this many books in the series. These are the characters. This is how they relate to each other. This is who's going to hook up in each book. These are the tropes. And then once I have that set for the whole series, I plot one book at a time. So I'll plot a book and then write it. And then I'll plot the next book and then write it. And when I say plot, it's very loose. Like all of my books are dual POV. And they alternate. They always alternate back and forth, back and forth. You'll never have 2 chapters in a row from the same point of view. Here's her chapter, and this is what happens. Here's his chapter, and this is what happens. And then back and forth until I know what happens in every single chapter. Because what I thought might happen to the next couple when I originally planned it all out might not happen, because stuff will come to me and I'll be like, ooh, this is this might be good. And so that'll change. So I don't plot the whole series, because that would just be a colossal waste of time.
Especially when you have that other, because it's happened as readers and listeners, you have that one scene where they're all hanging out at a diner or other location, and that one friend that literally is just there to be real quick about it says something, and then all of a sudden we're all like, are they gonna get a happily ever after? When are you writing their book? And you're going, no. There's no, they don't have a book. What do you mean? And then you're like, damn it.
I have one true standalone, which is the Bliss List. She has a best friend, and they have phone conversations because it's a vacation. Like, she goes on vacation, so she's not at home during the entirety of the book, and they have phone conversations because her friend is like the one person who stuck by her side through all of this, her turmoil. She had a really bad marriage. She ended up in divorce, and her husband ended up making her push all of her friends away, and this is the one person who stuck by her side the entire time. So they have a few phone conversations or text message conversations throughout the book, 2 or 3, not a ton, but as so many people are like, when is she going to get her own book? And I'm like, no, I don't have a story for her. I'm happy that you like her, but it's not happening.
A testament to how good of a writer you are that you made us feel wanting to know more about this character, whether it was, even if it's just a 1 or 2 liners that, you know, it just provides a piece of curiosity. But I'm also glad that you're also going with the, yeah, no, I don't have a story for her too, because I think it's the worst when a writer tries to make it happen and it doesn't flow right, or we devour the book so quickly. It just came out like 5 hours ago and we're already asking you when the next one's coming out. And you're like, really? Take a chill. Because I much rather you take your time and have it be an awesome book versus one that makes us go.
For sure. But I told you I'm a people pleaser, right?
Yes,
so there was
you
a
did.
moment. There was a moment where I was like,
and I'm so proud of you for not going forward with it. That was a good move for you. We all need some reassurance. I'm the girl that is a bit of a people pleaser, but I'm always the one that a little bit different. When something change your behavior, if I'm used to talking to you every day and it changes, I automatically bust out, what did I do?
oh yeah,
It's my fault. Or if we have something, yeah. So it's one of those like, oh, what did I do? So I understand.
I'm the same way, exactly the same
We're
way.
currently going through that right now. I haven't heard from someone in a couple of days and I'm going, did I do something? No, I didn't do something. It becomes an entire monologue.
Yeah.
Do you find that you're sometimes putting some of these kind of personality or characteristics, a little bit of yourself in the characters?
Because that's what I know, right? It's harder for me to attempt to make them strong and independent, and not to say that I'm not those things, but I've always got this internal monologue going, right? Slightly paranoid, am sensitive, and I am constantly worried that people are upset with me if something like that happens, like if they are acting weird or they give me a look or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I can't make every single one of my characters neurotic like me. But yeah, there are bits of me that come through, of course.
I think something that we always are curious about it with authors, like, hey, did it really happen to you? Or that friend, who is that? Or you know how it is, because have you gotten the question yet of like, when you write some of those steamy scenes, has any of your friends come busted out with something like, hey, is that something that you know that you know?
Well, I have this one friend. When we go out in public, she likes to shout, Piper James, right here. It's like 50 Shades of Gray. And I'm like, stop it. It is not. She loves to embarrass me. But she is like, we'll be at a concert, like in the bathroom, in the ladies' room. And she's telling every single person in there to buy my book because it's like 50 Shades of Gray. And I'm like, stop. It is not. Not that I didn't love those books, because I did, but it's not the same thing.
There was a time there, and I think it's starting to come back now, where it's like, if you like, and then they would show like the book cover and the title of the book, then you'll like, and then it was a different book. And that's great. It kind of gives us an idea. But there were some times that I'm going, yeah, no, those two books, not the same.
Exactly.
The reason why I was asking about the BDSM, because you have these boundaries, and you're really good about reassuring that that's okay, that we're not talking about this right now. Well, boundaries are important. I think sometimes when we are working with other folks, and especially when it's you're providing us with the entertainment, us as fans sometimes, and especially when the internet, I mean, I love the fact that we have that connections with you guys. Same thing with the narrators. I love that we can send you a quick DM saying, oh my God, I'm reading XYZ and I am crackling. And I'm sure that you guys are, really do enjoy that time. But there's some individuals sometimes that you have to remind them what those boundaries are. I think it's a good conversation sometimes to have with your community, as far as your own reader group,
really
about,
had any
hey,
readers cross
we can
any
talk about
boundaries
this,
with
but
me,
don't ask me about that. And
especially
that's
my
fair.
friends in
And
real
I
life
love that you do that with your readers.
But yeah, maybe I'm just not big enough yet. I don't have random people messaging me, things like that. It's mostly readers in my reader group, and I'm pretty transparent with them. My favorites is when like somebody will message me and be like, oh, I'm reading this book, and my husband is really benefiting from that. I had to shut it down. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. I guess I'm doing something right then.
It is something with the genre of romance, because it is it's written by women for women, and traditionally the majority of the time that we're able to discover new things about ourselves that we didn't know, whether it is a kink, or like I didn't know that I wanted to do this, whether it's baking or doing a wine pour in California. We learn so much based on the stories that you're giving us. It's always fun to kind of be able to do that and explore a little bit of potentially what we may not even know that we wanted
too, because I read every day. I get up, in the morning. It's kind of I take like an hour and read, and I'll be like, oh, all righty then. I guess I like that.
And know you were saying that you're reading more dark romance and trying to, dive into that genre specifically. Are you also an author that does not read rom-coms while you're in the midst of writing a story?
No, I'm not one of those authors. I read what I want to read. And plus, I like to see what people are enjoying. Like if there's a very popular rom-com by a very popular author, I want to see like their writing style, like what they're writing about. Not that I'm going to copy it or anything like that, just to see what readers are enjoying. Because if I'm not doing it right, then I want to kind of tweak what I'm doing. Plus, I really enjoy it. I'm not going to stop reading something that I really enjoy just because I'm writing it too. I don't understand that.
I think it's the fear of potential copying or that something is similar along the lines. And I think that's the author's biggest fear, which is, I understand it. But at the same time, I'm like, just because I do the one thing, like if you were making ice cream, doesn't mean that you don't have to have any. You may just want to do a different style of it and things like that. What about audiobooks? Do you listen to those?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, we can't talk anymore. We have to end. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so here's the thing about me and my brain is I have a one-track mind. So if I'm reading, like my husband gets so mad at me because if I'm scrolling on my phone, if I'm reading something, he can be talking to me for like 10 minutes and I will not hear a single word he says. I'm not one of those people that can listen to an audiobook while she's doing something else. My brain just doesn't work that way. What will happen is I will get distracted by something other than if I were trying to just listen to the audiobook and that's it, I would get distracted by something else and miss half the story because I can't do two things at once. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that I physically can't. I won't get it. When I sit down with my Kindle and I start reading, everybody knows, like, don't even try to talk to me, or you have to say my name very loudly and get my attention, or I'm not going to hear what you're saying.
Throw a bra at you or something, right?
Exactly.
Watch, you're going to get bra signing at the next convention that you go to.
That would be amazing.
On one cup's going to be like Piper and the other one, Jane.
Just don't take my eye out.
Well, we can do some other things that look their bras, but not, and then you can sign them almost like paper mache shit. But anyways, the listeners and the readers are creative when it comes down to their swag. I'm sure you've seen some of it, but I totally understand I used to be able to sit down and read the book. Like I said, vision the movie in front of me. Now, because of adulting and feeling some of that guilt of should be doing something of quote unquote value or, profitable, that I end up not really being able to focus on the book. And that's where the audiobooks for me have held for many years now. And so I totally understand having that different type of brain. And it doesn't mean that you don't love the audiobooks or you don't appreciate them and things like that, because you have now your books in audio. If you were like huge against it, you'd be like, yeah, no. So, but what made you decide to put them in audio?
Well, because that's what readers want, right? Because I don't listen to audiobooks. I don't really understand the process, which is why I go with companies to produce them for me. I did try to produce one of my young adult books as audiobooks, a terrible process for me. I didn't enjoy it and it didn't sell. And so I was like, I'm done, no more. But with the companies now that will produce them for you, I just kind of hand it over to them. And I'm like, do your thing. And because I wasn't going to do it myself anyway, so you can take your cut. And that's what readers want. They always are constantly asking me, like, is this on audiobook? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. And then I'll get a new one on audiobook. And I'm like, hey, here it is. I want to provide my books in the format that the readers want them in, but sometimes it just takes some time. I'm not one of those authors that has the time or the money to produce audiobooks for every book release that has it out on release. You know what I mean? I kind of have to wait and see if the book's selling first, if I can fit it into the budget,
I think a lot of times we forget that making of an audiobook is expensive. It's an upfront cost to you. And while some people will, because the conversation is always going around about how it costs 10,000 plus 20,000, hundreds of thousands to do a book, and you're going, who the hell is doing your book that's costing that much? But even you're going, why? You can get a dual narrated book by good narrators for about $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, depending on how you want to do it and who you want. But still,
it is
$1,000 is a lot of money for folks.
And it's a gamble.
So It's a lot.
It's a gamble because you can spend all that money creating a wonderful audiobook. And if 5 people enjoy it, that's great, but that's not earning back the money that you put into it. And this is our livelihood, you know, this is how I pay the bills. It has to be a strong gamble for me. I have to be confident that it's going to be worth it. Otherwise, that's jeans for my kids, or you know what I mean? It's food on the table. So new parts
for the Jeep.
Yeah, my poor Jeep.
I get to say that because my husband and kid both have Jeeps. I kind of get every so often the question of like, so insert new part name here. I'm like, no, we're good. That part works perfectly fine. Why do you need to update it? As they look at me in my books and I'm like, that's different. Okay, that one book is going to cost me like $12. That new bumper is going to cost you $300. And do we need a new bumper? No. I mean, they both got new soft tops for their individual cars for Christmas. Okay, I'm like, they both kind of needed a bit of that update.
I have a hard top
they were
for
happy.
mine, but when I first got it, my husband was still working at the time. I needed a way to get that top on, off and on by myself. So I bought a lift, which is like a winch, and it lifts the top up to the ceiling and holds it there and stores it all summer. We just moved, and then the weather started warming up. I'm like, hey, you need to get that lift up. And he just got it up for me last week. He's like, happy Mother's Day. Just because I want to drive around with no top on because it's so nice outside.
Cheap folks, interesting individuals, because it's one of those, my husband's the same way, because we have a lot of us here with 4 of us in the house, and the way that the driveway is, we had to sometimes play car Jenga, who gets to park where based on work schedule, so we're not having to move cars around. So there are times where I'm blocking him in and I'm like, just take my car, and he's like, nope, no, I want to drive my Jeep. So I'm like, all right. He's like, I want to drive her. I'm like, all right, go ahead, drive your car.
Nobody ever wants to take my car. It makes me so mad.
The car.
My husband's like, no, I don't like the sun beating on my head. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you, a vampire? Like, stop. And we just, it's an automatic.
Is it stick or automatic?
She's a pavement princess. Like, okay. I wash her and wax her and keep her clean for the most part. And she hasn't been on any trails or off-roading or anything because I don't want to scratch her. And I get a lot of hate for that because, you know, Jeepers, that's the whole point, right? Is to go out. And I'm like, but what if I break her? I want to.
Right? I'm telling you, Paul's the same way. My husband, he's like, I want to go off-roading. And I'm like, I know your Jeep's lifted, not hugely lifted, but lifted. But that's also your means to get to and from work. And I hate to adult at this moment in time. So unless we win the lottery and you can buy a one that's for play and one for responsibilities, no. Then I get the sad puppy eyes. And I'm like, if you want, I can go make some dirt because we live in Florida. Just go to the backyard, make some water and dirt and throw it down there as if you were, off-roading.
Yeah, he's gonna get stuck in a swamp down there. You better watch
Not the same, Viviana, not the same. I know. Yeah. I mean, he does it all the time when he's like raining and we get a little bit of clog, water streets that are a bit immersed in water. And he's like, and I'm like, stop it, go easy on it. That's when something happens with the transmission or something happens with the oil, whatever. It's like, I'm like, done.
Oh, yeah.
And then the whole thing now with the ducking has started.
Oh, yeah.
Too,
I have ducks all over.
Do you duck? You duck
together.
Your Jeeps?
They're like a string along my dashboard.
So for those of us that are listening going, what the fuck are they talking about? So people that love Jeeps are a specific kind of breed, just like us that we love books. And we're like, we must have the updated cover. I'm like, oh, they have the discrete cover and the regular cover. We must have both books. Drivers are similar to that. And their love and affections towards the Jeep. I was about to call it their car. It's their Jeep. And ducking has thing where the Jeep driver will duck another Jeep that they see by leaving a bath duck. A rubber ducky. As we all know now, there's rubber duckies with all sorts of themes, including author stuff. So there's been a few times where you guys have had rubber duckies at conferences and I grab them. And as I'm going through my swag to get rid of things because of a move or because I want to change things around, he sees the ducks and he goes, can I have that? And I'm like, oh.
That's funny. Well, when I first got my Jeep, well, I got it in 2019 and ducking started in 2020. So at some point during that year, somebody left a duck in my handle on my door. And I came out of Target with the kids and I'm like, what is this? And of course your brain goes, oh my gosh, are they tagging my car? Is this a signal to the other human traffickers that they can kidnap me? Like, yep. I had no idea what it was because they didn't have like a note on it. There was nothing. It was just a duck. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe it dropped out of the car next to me and somebody thought it dropped out of my car. And so I just kind of threw it on the ground next to the car next to me in case it fell out of their car, like if they had a little kid or something. So then, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 months later, I was at Starbucks and I come out and there's a duck on my Jeep and it has like a card attached that says, "Nice Jeep, duck, duck Jeep. Post a picture on Instagram and Facebook." And, and I was like, what is this? And so I Googled it, of course. And I'm like, this is a thing. Oh my gosh, that's why that duck was on my Jeep. And then I felt really bad that I threw it on the ground. Of course, I immediately go on Amazon because I'm all about stuff like this. I love the Jeep wave. And if people don't wave back at me, I get mad. And
oh God,
I
the
get
Jeep wave.
so
Yes.
on Amazon and order a bunch of ducks. But now like there's some Jeepers that don't like it. They think it's stupid. They think you're putting trash on their car. So then you get back into that paranoia and you're like, should I duck this Jeep? Like, I don't know. Are they going to be mad? Are they going to like it? Are there ducks on the dashboard already? I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't.
And I'm sure the driver's going, I hope someone ducks me. Because they just got a brand new car.
Right.
Oh, in this case, Jeep. Yeah. There's out there. And for you too, swag, just put your name on the duck. Someone will use it with their Jeep.
That's a good idea.
And all. Yeah. It's a easy swag and it's cute. You can also put it on your desk if you don't have a Jeep. It's okay. You can still put it on your desk or I have one or two in my bookcases next to the author's books. And those are because they're cute. And now they have themes. And I think he has a Viking one, like a Viking duck. It's bigger and other ducks too. So it's, lots of possibilities there from a swag perspective and multi-purpose. Right. And, from a cost perspective, you can have some of those in your Jeep and, market. So now that we went there, while we were talking about audiobooks and and fence of that.
Right. That's where we were.
I'm gonna bring it right back. It's okay. Yeah. So from a listener's perspective or readers, if you guys appreciate the stories, buy the ebooks. Even if you're waiting, don't wait for the book to come out in audio. Even if you're strictly an audio listener, if you love Piper's books or anybody else's author's books, buy the ebook. That helps solidify that people want the audio and then they can afford it. So go from that perspective. Yeah. I think it's important to support you guys in any way, even if you don't have it or it hasn't come up yet. But the fact that you're wanting to do it and we're having the conversation about the reality of it is from cost and it's important. He also needs to go get her ducks, folks. So buy the ebook. Hey, we have to have fun. Speaking of fun, I do love to play a game of 2 truths and a lie, where you tell us 3 things about yourself and we have to figure out which one's the lie. Did you do your homework?
I did. It was hard. It took me a long time because I don't want to sound stupid.
That's why I give it for homework. Not just something stupid, but I think I did it one time and that was the look of, why are you doing this to me? And I'm like, never, ever again. I give it for homework. So you're going to tell us 3 things about yourself and we're going to figure out which one's the lie. So whenever you're ready.
Number 1, my husband was once on the television show Wipeout. Number 2, I have my pilot's license. And number 3, I once flirted shamelessly with Will Smith.
Love how you threw your husband in there as one of your 2. Okay, so we have your husband was on a show called Wipeout. You have your pilot license and you shamelessly flirted with Will Smith.
Right.
Let's see. Is the lie that you famously flirted with Will Smith?
Nope.
Ooh, there's always a story there. My goodness. Oh, the husband on the show on the Wipeout?
Nope. I don't have my pilot's license. Come on.
I know. I kind of want maybe this is one of her moments where she's like, I'm gonna just do it. Should have gone with my gut. I should have known. Goodness gracious. Okay, so you don't have your pilot's license. Do you want to tell us a story about the whole flirting shamelessly?
Sure. So when I was 21, many moons ago, I lived in Southern California and I worked at Toys R Us in Thousand Oaks. The Thousand Oaks location was where a lot of the famous people with kids like to shop. They're, the people that work there. I only worked there for like 4 months. And the first famous person I saw was Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson. And I had absolutely no idea who he was. I was fresh off the boat from Georgia. I had just moved to California. It was obvious that I had no idea who he was, and he was not happy about that. He was making me a little nervous. I thought he was like a serial killer or something. So anyway, after I got my feet wet with that whole experience, I was working on a Sunday. At that time, it was 1997. We had to ask customers for their phone number and input it into the register, and it like cross-referenced their address or something so we could send them junk mail, whatever. So it was really busy, and so I was like opening a bag, and I'm like, can I have your phone number? And I look up and it's Will Smith standing right in front of me. And then so like there's a little pause and I was like, please. He starts laughing and he's all, well, that's a little sudden. Don't you think we should date first? And I'm like, yes. please. And so he bought a train set he had his kid with him and this big burly bodyguard, and he bought a train set. I rang it up. I'm giving him his change. I kind of I hand it to him and I kind of hold on to it and don't let go. And I said, it's not too late. You can still give me your phone number if you want to. And he goes, he laughs and he looks left, and he looks right, and he looks back at me and he goes, I'll come back later. And I said, okay, I get off at 3:00. But he was just dating Jada Pink at the time. And 2 weeks later, she came through my line. And I felt,
oh boy.
I was like, oh, I flirted with your man a couple weeks ago. It's one of those moments that I'll remember forever. I mean, it's been 25 years. I'll remember every second of that. And he probably forgot it the minute he walked out of the store.
I'm glad it's the truth for you. It's interesting how where we have those moments of not really doing something that we would usually do just because fill in the blank reasons, the stars align, the atmosphere around you changes. But I mean, it did provide you. To this day, they still ask people can I have your phone number? That was a good way to kind of have that conversation. It's nice to hear that also that he played along and he was fun with it. But it's always interesting when people of some form of fame are and you don't know who I am. No, sorry.
I looked Tommy Lee right in the eye and said, can I have your phone number? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay. And then he proceeded to stare at me with that, just this stare and he had 2 carts full of toys. And I was like, oh, so are you doing some early Christmas shopping? And he's like, no. And I mean, he was it was so obvious that I had no idea who he was and he wasn't happy about it. And it wasn't until he called his wife over to sign for the credit card. And I didn't recognize her either because she didn't have any makeup on. She was pregnant. She was just looking a little rough. And then she went to sign with her left hand, and I saw the tattoo on her ring finger. And I had just read some article how they got their names tattooed on their ring fingers. And I was like, no. So she started to walk away and her sleeve lifted up and I saw the barbed wire tattoo around her arm. Do you know who Pamela Anderson is, right? Okay.
I do.
I thought I was like, oh my God. And then the next people came and they're like, who is that? I'm like, I think that was Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson. She's like, oh, it must have been. There was a lot of people crowded around them. And I was like, oh my God. I feel like such an idiot just chattering away because this weird barefoot guy with all these tattoos is making me nervous. And so he goes out and he stands outside staring at me, continuing to stare at me while he waited for a big ticket item for them to bring back from the back. And I was like, I'm so sorry. It was so funny.
Yeah.
And a little bit uncomfortable.
That's where the personalities, I think the difference is some individuals that might be narcissistic and, and and just
Don't
assholes.
You know who I am?
Yeah. And I'm sure it happens to you guys authors too, in the sense of especially a lot of the questions that happen in the groups for when we have conferences. They've been asked now, how do I go and approach an author that I don't know anything about them, or I've never read them before, or have even known about them? And I'm like, the same way you would approach someone when you're asking them to grab the thing on the top tier, you're just nice. Ask them about the cover. I will say that there's been it's only been 1 or 2 in the 15 years where I had an author kind of have a similar, do you not know who I am? I'm like, no. And you go, be nice to me, or otherwise I'm not going to read your book.
I was having people because I've only done 2 signings. And so, and not a lot of people know me. I'm fairly new. They don't know who I am. I'm not one of the big wigs, with the signings and stuff. And they come up and they're super nice. And they're like, so which one of these is your favorite books and why? And I'm like, do you walk up to strangers and ask them to pick their favorite kid? What? Don't ask me that because then I feel bad. I don't know. I'm like, well, this is my best-selling one. This is the one readers like the best. Because I can't pick a favorite. Come on.
I know. Definitely something that even sometimes as readers, we're like, oh, you want us to tell you it's a favorite? I've learned to ask additional questions well, what do you like to read? Do you like? And then kind of suggest that the author then use something if you writing specifically more rom-com, then it's a matter of maybe the tropes. And okay, do you prefer this or that? And then the authors are like, oh, okay, thanks for not letting me choose. So I'll let them know. It's yeah, I wouldn't ask you. It is like asking a favorite kid.
But I ask people, I'm like, well, what kind of tropes do you like to read? What are your favorites? Because I have a plethora here and I can show you which books you like enemies lovers. Oh, this one, this one, this one, and this one. I'm not real great at getting put on the spot if you haven't noticed.
No, yeah, but I mean, from a reader's perspective, it's also a bit intimidating when it comes down to coming to these events. Sometimes people are traveling by themselves. Other times it's their very, very first time ever going to such an event, and we get bombarded with all of you guys folks. I mean, and the two that you went to were not small, and it's just one of those where you're going, okay, where do I start? What do I do? And then we're coming up to you because we
Right.
want to know everyone, and we want to get a book from everybody because we love supporting and also great stories. Hello, why not? And then we're like, how do I
Right.
say hi? So,
Oh no, I know because in Denver, I had an author that I really, 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 really wanted to meet. And so I shut my table, I shut my table down like 15 minutes early on Saturday and snuck up there. Like she was closing her stuff down, and I'm like, what books do you have left? And they only had like 2 books left. And so I bought it and had her sign it. And I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to talk to her. And she was super distracted and didn't really talk to me because it was the end, right? And they were tired and everything was wrapping up. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to sneak out now. So I didn't actually talk to her.
oh,
And it's the same thing. You get a little
yeah.
starstruck.
Yeah, that fluttering and yeah.
Oh yeah, I feel you. I feel
Oh
you on
yeah,
that
it
one.
happens. I don't get a whole lot of starstruck and stuff like that. But when I finally get to meet someone that either like this, we've had this kind of conversation, you've been on the podcast before, and now we're like cool friends, and then I'm like, oh my god, I'm finally meeting you in person. Do I live up to the expectations of what they thought I would be about? And also making sure that they're okay. I also don't want to ever bug is the other way, which I'm sure you feel very similar to that. I don't ever want to be a source of that. I'm like,
Right.
oh, they're busy. They're not going to talk to me. I'll talk to them later.
Oh yeah, that's totally me. Because this particular author that I'm talking about, I saw her the lunch earlier in the day, and I lit was talking to somebody, and I was like, oh, and then I turned around and ran away.
See, that's where you need to have a friend with you where they're going to be like, nope, come back here.
And I'm like, oh, it's her. Oh my God. And then I just turned around and like strode off. Because I didn't want to bother. I didn't want to be
Oh
like, oh, and
no.
have her be like, oh, who are you? Why are you trying to talk to me right now? I'm busy.
No, I want to say 99.9% of
Right.
you guys are
Of course
not like
not.
that.
Yeah.
So I
It's
always
just
let the readers kind of know, like, no, go say it, just like you would in any kind of just be nice, say excuse me, and then start from there. You guys love it. I think you guys really do love when the readers come up to you guys and say, oh my God, can you please sign this? Or I love
yes.
this book and things like that. But you
Yes.
definitely need to
At
go with a
my
friend, girl.
very first signing, I had a couple of readers bring their own copies of my book to be signed by me. It wasn't just somebody walking by going, oh, what do you write? I'll buy these books. They had their own copies, and I literally teared up. I almost started crying full on right there in the middle of the signing because I couldn't believe it, how amazing that was that they and I know my books sell. Like I know that my books sell, but to see it in real life makes it so much more real than looking at a report at how many people have bought books. You know what I mean? So that was really a really great moment for me.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad. It's always fun when the readers will bring their stuff from home or they'll do the pre-orders, but also some of them will create new, like almost like photo albums with their favorite covers on them for you guys to sign. It's always fun, I think, when that happens and
Yeah, it was
the
really cool.
reaction is always positive. So that's always a good thing. I'm glad that you've had good experiences. Yeah, especially for your
Right.
first one and then your second con being, how it was as big as it was to have all good experiences.
I
But you do
know.
need to have a friend with you though, girl. I mean, like that's going to be like, let's go.
Maybe I'll
Let's go
come
up to this
find you.
author.
Like,
I know,
I need
yeah.
some
I tend to be that
support.
friend for some people. Yes, come find me. I'll get
Right.
you. I'm like, well, all right, where is she?
Right.
Who are we going to? Have it be an event with Troy. And I'm like, hey, let's go talk to Troy. You work with words all day long, from reading the words to writing them. What's your favorite word? Which is separate from a favorite curse word because that's the second part of this question.
Oh, my favorite word? You mean
No,
like the
a
word I
favorite,
use the
how it
most?
sounds or what makes you feel or like the way that you express yourself.
Oh, Lord. There you go, putting me on the spot again. I like,
In thought.
I don't even know how to say it. That's embarrassing. Cacophony. So I always thought that word was pronounced cacophony.
Cacophony?
And it wasn't until I did my first audiobook and I was listening to the files and I'm like, what? They said it wrong. And I had to Google it and I was like, oh my gosh. So do you know what cacophony is?
No, I don't.
So it's like when there's a lot of noise and it's wild and you can't make out any particular sound. It's a cacophony. I still can't say it right. I love using that word. I don't know. I use it in a lot of my books.
Okay.
You'll have to look it up.
I'm gonna, yeah.
Cacophony.
Got it. I wrote it down. I'm gonna look it up. Well, now that you know that your books are going to be in audio, or potentially at one point will be in audio, do you sometimes include some of these words just to see if they can say it the right way?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm not even thinking about that while I'm
Okay.
writing.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, well, maybe one day you'll be like, Some authors do that for fun when they have a more of a working relationship with the narrators, and just for fun. I'm like, okay,
Right.
because that kind of word though would be one that I would think you're doing it on purpose. So that's what I was asking.
No, it's just me trying to sound smart.
No.
What do you mean?
Well, what's your favorite curse word?
Oh, fuck. My favorite curse word to write is fuck. My favorite curse word to say is probably shit. I say that a lot. I have a potty mouth. I curse like a sailor. I don't know.
You haven't said
Weird.
one bad word, quote unquote, or this entire time we've been talking.
I know, but because it's a podcast. Like maybe I should be good. I don't know. It's funny because like when I'm driving, I tend to have a little bit of road rage.
No.
And so so my kids are used to me screaming stuff. My youngest, he's 14 now, but when he was a little younger, he was like, Mom, watch your mouth. And I'm like, you don't say those things right. But my favorite word to scream at dumb drivers is whore for some reason.
What?
There's something about the word whore when I yell at you, stupid whore, makes me, I don't know, it hits me somewhere.
Okay.
Don't put that in there.
That is not one word that I would have thought to use while driving in an anger rage kind of perspective.
I don't know why. There's something, it just hits right in the chest where it just makes me feel good.
Yeah.
To yell that.
No, I mean, when you said it, I was like, okay, I understand it now, because it is the elongating of the word, the how your mouth moves, and then also the OR, like you whore.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so it's not.
I want to borrow that.
It's not judgmental of their sexual preferences in any way.
No.
It's just there's something that feels good about screaming that word. I don't know. I'm terrible. My road rage has gotten a lot better. Okay. I'm not nearly as bad as I was when I was younger, but I do have a Jeep now and I have to drive a lot slower because they don't
go fast. Plus also the wind in your hair, you're having a good time. You're like, oh.
And I moved from Southern California to Idaho, so there's a lot less traffic, a lot less opportunities for people to
be a whore on the
road, or be whores on the road. Yeah, exactly. And I don't have a top or doors on, so I got to be careful what I yell because they can hear me.
Wow, you take your doors down too? Damn. Okay.
Oh yeah. I don't have them off yet. I don't take those off until usually the end of June. Last year I did it earlier because it was a really dry summer. But if it's raining, like I can put the top back on myself because of the winch, but I can't put the doors up too heavy. I have to have my husband or my oldest son help me get those on and off. So I try to wait till it's pretty much done raining. The rainy season is over.
That's the thing here in Florida. We're always in the rainy season at some point or another. And I was like, did you check the weather?
Yeah, I can see why you need a soft top there. So it's easier to put it on and off because I grew up in Georgia, not far from Florida. So it's kind of the same kind of weather.
And I literally split. It's like, oh, we'll run over there. So yeah, he's been itching to be able to take the top down and go for a ride. And I'm like, it's okay. You go for a ride. Go pick me some Starbucks. I'm okay.
Right.
Yeah, I let him have his fun with his Jeep. So before we go, can you tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next?
I am currently working on the Branson Bandits book 3 called First and Goal. It's a football related series that I released the first 2 books, The Turnover and Bump and Run. So almost done with that. Next, I do have a 4th book planned for that series, but like I told you earlier, I'm kind of feeling like maybe I want to do something a little different. I might take a break from that and work on this other project that is, in my head, the darker romance, or I might get scared and stick to what I know and just finish the series. So I don't know. I'll have to update you on that later.
Yeah, I'll send you little love notes like, okay, where are we with this? You can tell me I'm scared. Like, just go back to it. It's okay. So I know that you're in audio. The Little Black Book is coming out May 23rd. So that'll be available. And that's narrated by Vanessa Moyer and Tora Duran by the time this airs. And then The Little Black Rose is coming out in June 20th. Yeah. So that's what we have.
Right. So the series will be complete in audio.
That's always a fun. I know people like to to get those back to back. I'm like, it's okay. Well, we wait for the one, we can get the others and read the other stuff. So don't just sit there and not get the book. You want to wait until all of them are available. That doesn't help.
Right.
And get us the next book.
No, it just makes us think that the series is not working, and maybe we shouldn't invest all the time and money into finishing it because everybody's
I think
waiting.
we're starting to have that concept a little better for the readers to understand it.
I don't see that nearly as much as I did a few years ago.
Appreciate that though. Thank you, Piper, so much for being part of this year's Audiobook Lovin Series. This has been a blast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had so much fun.
Good, thank you. And thank you for letting me be your first.
Yay. I'll remember you forever.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's awesome. Everyone, thank you for hanging out with us today, and we hope you've enjoyed this chat as well as the series. Make sure to follow Piper on social media, and we'll be including all that information on the landing page for this episode for the series over at Viviana Enchantress of Books. And until next time, happy listenings.
A special thank you to authors DJ Krimmer, Tana Stone, Landon Beach, PJ Fiala, and all of our sponsors of the Audiobook Lovin 2023 series.
Visit today's episode post to listen to sound clips of some of the books we discussed and enter the month-long giveaway. If you enjoyed the Audiobook Lovin podcast series and you want more, join the Audiobook Lovin podcast Patreon for early access to podcasts, exclusive content like the Would You Rather game and dinner party guests, and additional incentives such as bloopers, graphics, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/audiobooklovin. Thank you for joining Viviana and her guests for this podcast, and we hope you tune in again as we continue to celebrate Audiobook Month. The Audiobook Lovin Series is hosted by Viviana, the Enchantress of Books. Please make sure to visit the main page linked within the post to learn more about the entire Audiobook Lovin Series and the enchanting author and narrator guests who have joined us over the years. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a review wherever you listened, and please follow us on social media platforms and subscribe to the Viviana, the Enchantress of Books newsletter. Until next time, happy listening. Audiobook Lovin hopes you have enjoyed this program.